Hi, and welcome to Publishing Power. My name is Joellen, and I'm your host today. I'm with Mike Stickler. Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Joellen. So nice to be with you.
It's great to have you. Mike is the principal of Leadership Books and is an author of over 40 books and trainings, entrepreneur, radio host, and a highly sought after motivational speaker. He has a best-selling book, A Journey to Generosity. It's widely acclaimed throughout the Christian community, and he's the publisher of Generous Living magazine and writes for the Christian Post, a generous life column. Mike also has a new book coming out this fall, so we're excited to hear about that. And why we've invited him here today is to talk about mastering a book publishing plan. So Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background with this book publishing plans.
So I've been an author writing books since right around 2000. My first book was published in 2001. And when we got to 2013, my traditional publisher, who I had, was not really getting the book out the way I expected it. And I was getting a little frustrated. It was my larger business, which is public speaking, relied upon the book being out. And so being an entrepreneur that I am, and I started to look into really deeply what's going on in the book publishing world. My writing coach, Art Ritter, he and I together started to dig a little deeper into all of it just to find out that the entire publishing world is a mess. And it has been for a long time. It's changed so much, even since 2013. It has changed so much. And if you're not really following it, if you're not really in the middle of it, you don't understand what's happening. And so there was a lot of reasons why my book wasn't going. And so ultimately, we decided to start our own publishing business, first just to publish my books because my income and my speaking engagements and whatnot relied upon it. But then after a while, we started to realize, hey, we kind of are onto something here. Let's start taking on some other authors and bringing a much larger presence to our publishing business. So I didn't really start out to be in the publishing world, but I ended up being there first out of self-preservation, and now trying to help authors with their nonfiction leadership style books.
Right. And I understand that this leadership books covers a lot of the nonfiction genres out there. It's the business, leadership, the company culture, project management, and everything from Christian and memoirs, finance, and more. So it's quite a large spectrum out there.
Yeah, right now on our website, we have about 1,100 titles on, and we're growing at about 10 a day right now. And you can put it in 4 general categories: business thought leaders, finance thought leaders, a general thought leadership like leadership and those kinds of things. And then we have Christian leaders, which is kind of rare. And we divide those up roughly in 25 percentiles. There's less, believe it or not, there's less business style books than there are, finance style books than there are business style books. And so that's always something that we're trying to bolster. But it's pretty amazing. And I think we really found a great way to not only publish, but also to get books distributed and get lots of them sold.
Right. I mean, it's growing really quickly. Now, you had mentioned to me that basically you have a path that you walk the authors through on when they're creating this nonfiction book. And one of the key elements was that it was before they started writing that you were planning things out. Can you kind of walk us through the plan that you have, the publishing plan?
So one of the challenges to recognize, and this was part of our deep dive into the publishing world, is to figure out what's going on. So it's important to understand, from our view, some of the setup of what's happened. So for example, when Amazon entered into the business, they invited everyone in. Okay. Why? Because they wanted to sell an ebook reader.
Right.
And they didn't have content for it. So they invited everyone in. And what that actually did was flood the market with substandard quality books. Mm-hmm. And then they pushed real hard to say, well, you know what? Everybody needs to do an ebook and everybody needs to do it now. Well, when you look at the sales, actually what's happening is about 85% roughly of the book's sales are still in the hardcore and softcore space. And then you have that smaller 15% of ebooks, which are important, but there's roughly about 5 million authors in the 15% space. And
Right.
most of them are not selling many more than 100 books. And so why does that all matter? Well, it matters because why would you want to step over 85% of the pie to get to the 15% of the pie?
Okay.
So we have a kind of a unique model where we will take a book and we will release it through 4 releases, first with a hardcover to where we sell about 5,000 copies of that. Then we announce a softcover and we run that for about a year. Then we announce the ebook, and then we announce the audiobook. And so there's almost a 4-year cycle to a book release for us. Now, the other challenge is, of course, is the quality of the writing and the quality of what happens in the content. Now, we want to, one of the things I like to say is, gosh, Joanne, if you're standing on the stage and you're doing a presentation, you've done well because you get a standing ovation, okay? People celebrate what you've done, and then they come and talk to you about it. Well, in the book business, the way you've done well is when they not just give you a great endorsement, but they talk about how they bought 3 more books for their friends, that they sat down and read it in one setting because it was so engaging. That is the applause, okay? That's the standing ovation for an author.
Right.
So our goal for our authors is to get to that space, is to the people when they close the book, they're like, wow, that changed my life. I was really, really impacted by that. Yeah. So that's the content. So what we really work hard at is working with our authors first in the development stage. What are we trying to get to? What is the goal of this book? What do you want them to do at the end of this book? It might be buy more books. It might be to hire you as a consultant. It might be for you to go start your own nonprofit. I don't know. What is your goal? That's up to the author. And then we develop that manuscript based on what that goal is. And then we go through with our authors, just dealing very tightly with coaching them and helping them write it, keeping their voice. And then we go through about 5 edits through the process to get the book to exactly where we want to go, including in one of those edits is we do what we call for the interior portion, what we call a peer review, where we get 6 to 10 folks who are avid readers or an expert in the field of what the subject matter of the book is, and we ask them to deeply read it and then give us feedback. From that peer review, we might accept some of the suggestions or reject some of those suggestions. But the reason we do that is it's far into the process, and we believe that at that point, everybody's too close to it. The author's too close to it. The editors are too close to it. Everybody's too close to it and can't see the strengths or weaknesses any longer. They all think they got a great book, but do they really? And that peer review is kind of a wake up to the author and to the editors. Really, where is it? And then, of course, we go through the final stages of a proofread, and then we do printer proof, and then we do advanced copies, and then we actually start to ship to the customer. And so that the process for us is 8 to 12 months just to get to a place where we're ready to launch the book.
Yeah, but I think that's what's so important is quite often people think, okay, I wrote this down, I got this information out of my head onto the paper, now I'm done, put it out there. But it really isn't. It's knowing your readers, it's knowing your audience, it's knowing where they are, how they purchase, where they read, and meeting them, their needs, not only as a reader, but as a member of your community. And I think that's really difficult to see sometimes. Now with nonfiction, it helps because it is, as you said, you yourself are a public speaker. So, having that book is a validation, and it allows you to be with your fan longer. You go home with them, and that's really unique and a special way to interact with people, and you're in their mind a lot longer. So all of this is through the publishing and the creation plan, but I also know that you do a lot with the marketing. And so the marketing you have a very multi-pronged approach. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the effects that you've experimented with and what's been most effective? And I know every author is different, but tell us a little bit about your experience.
Almost all of our authors are either public speakers or consultants. And so they have a much larger business model in mind. And in essence, the mentality, and I'm gonna irritate some people right now, but I want you to hear where I'm going with this. The mentality that your book is kind of a fat business card that just kind of gets you the door open and shows your bona fides, those kinds of things, in my view, is the misuse of a book.
Right.
Okay? Think about it. If you can get your perfect customer to read your book, being convinced that what you have to say they need,
Right.
and then they pick up the phone and talk to you, it's a whole nother kind of conversation than trying to convince them that what you have is what they need, doing the traditional sales model, and it extends the sales process. We don't do that. Now, of course, if you're speaking and they take the book home too, that's also a benefit. But what we're trying to do is get the book in their hands. So what we do is we find your perfect customer, we sell that perfect customer a book, we turn that buyer into a reader, because about 80% of the people that buy a book don't read it all the way through. And then from a reader to a fan, the fan of who you are of your content, your consulting, your speaking, your thought leadership. And then we engage them into hiring you as a speaker, a consultant, and those kinds of things. Now, the how is we use everything from social media marketing to social influencer marketing to content marketing. We do event marketing. We do retargeting, a lot of retargeting, and we do it primarily all on the internet. We very seldom push to sell in a bookstore. We don't do any marketing. I mean, the kind of marketing we do to bookstores is negligible, because what we want is people to buy and engage. The other silly thing is this is just basic business, but when you sell a book and you're in the consulting business or you're in the speaking business, if you sell a book to somebody on Amazon or you sell a book to somebody in a bookstore, you have no idea who bought it. You don't know if it was your grandma or your competitor or your perfect customer. You don't have any idea. And so you can't actually go back and try to sell them anything. You can't try to get them engaged with you any further. So with our process, we capture all that data and it becomes the author's proprietary information. And we continually work with them. And it's worked really great. Right now, our authors are selling 30 to 50,000 books over a 4-year period.
That's fantastic.
And they're engaging about 1,500 people in further business. That's pretty awesome.
That's amazing. I mean, and I mean, who doesn't want to have those book sales, but also to do it in a drip effect rather than that spike and then the collapse, the instant death doesn't really keep you there. But when you can get that easily fed and then you add in the next stream and add in the next stream, I mean, that's really long term. And it also, the validation is not just as much, but the ability to stand time in the internet nowadays, that can be a day, to stand over a week, to be in the public light for more than a week, but to be in the public light of your people, of your audience for 4 years, that's a lot of opportunity. I mean, that's all I can think is that's a lot more speaking engagements. It's a lot more business. It's a lot of opportunity. And of course, if they're avid readers, they're waiting for your next book. So hopefully you can, keep that going. That's fantastic.
Right. And if they're avid readers, when your next book comes out, you actually know who bought the first book.
Right.
So you can actually sell it to them, opposed to, I hope it gets there. And I hear lots of arguments, by the way, about that as well. I put an ad in the back of my book. We try all these different ways to try to connect with them. Well, that's all true, but that's kind of like somebody who has come to your house in an open house, and then they walk out the door and you have no idea who they are. And then you just hope one day you find them again. Right. That's a challenging effort, and it's just not good marketing.
No.
And so, and social media and the way the whole world works now, as I mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur almost 40 years, and the way marketing works now is amazing. It's really amazing how you can target your customer and get your product in front of them at exactly the right time. Right. Something we couldn't do even 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
No, 5 years ago. I mean, remarketing ads with Google came out 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I think it was. But again, it's in the time space of the electronic books that you mentioned, which is, the last decade, decade and a half.
Right.
So much has changed. So much has changed. And people often think about just these ebooks you're talking about, and they are ignoring the fact that a hardcover and a softcover book really, I mean, those are my favorites. I'm a big fan of Kindle, but my favorite books, I always go out and buy the hard copy, and I've always written all over it and highlighted it and thought about it. And yeah, it's a very big deal. Tell me a little bit more about the social influencer, because that is something, we have a lot of people who talk about your book launch and your marketing and different things, but the social influencer, that's a difficult task to maybe get on other people's radars. How do you do that?
The social influencer, just to explain first, is people who are out in basically social warriors, people who are out and have, 1 million followers on their Twitter and 20 or 30,000 followers on their Facebook, and they're always posting and they're always communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they build a fan base. People like their content. So recommendations from those individuals, and they're primarily all individuals, into their audience. So in other words, they put out a tweet and say, hey, I just read, Seth Godin's book, and it was really amazing. You should get it too. And they include a link.
Mm-hmm.
When they send that out to 1 million people, you're going to sell 5,000 books.
Right.
Okay. So how does that work? Well, nowadays people do that in several ways. They sell you that. That can be anywhere between $500 and $1,000 per tweet to send out something like that. You can build a reputation with them and offer affiliate programs where the more books they sell or the more that happens through their interaction, the more revenue that they generate. And then it's important, just going and getting a star to do it. Well, first off, stars are kind of reluctant to do it, but when you do, you often get the wrong kind of people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had a boy band star one time put out a tweet of ours, and it was not a solicited thing. He put it out, and we just got bombed by all these kids. And not a one of them was ever going to buy a book, but all of a sudden, I mean, just all these kids were wanting to join and sign up and, follow you on Twitter and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't want you, because there isn't a ramification to all of that when it comes to the marketing.
Yeah.
The algorithm sees it differently. Now it's starting to give it to all these kids instead of putting it to your perfect customer. Right. So there's challenges to all that. And if I can say to your audience, whatever you do, don't go out and buy followers. It's the worst thing you can do to yourself. You'll end up needing to, once you really get into this, you'll end up needing to take your page down and starting all over again because you have the wrong people following you and the algorithm doesn't understand that.
No, it's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, years ago, you could do all kinds of weird things. You could buy and stuff and do all kinds of interesting little tactics. But now the algorithms, as you say, but the artificial intelligence is just too smart. It
right.
just connects everything so quickly. And maybe you're getting good traffic, but if it's the wrong traffic, it's going to keep feeding you more of that traffic.
Right. Right.
So I guess then you got to find something to sell those new clients, and that's not really what you need to be wasting your time.
Well, they're not really clients. I just on a brief fun story, I had a guy who bought, I think he spent like $3,000 to get, I don't know, a couple thousand followers on his Facebook. Mm-hmm. Well, they all came from Africa. They were all paid like 50 cents to like him. That's why they did it. And now Facebook thinks that all of his customers are people in Eastern Africa who don't have very much money, and it keeps throwing all the ads at him, that group of people, and that's not who his clients are.
No.
It's something that is just people are trying to take advantage of your need without actually recognizing what you're truly what your goals are.
Right.
But, it's a neat world. It actually is. It's really neat to follow and sell books in it and see people engaged in it.
Right. It's fantastic. I mean, it's great that we can do that, but now we need to be a little bit more wise, and I think you need to think ahead. And you mentioned that the publishing plan happens before the writing, and then the writing and the editing, and then you're into the book cover and all those important things. But the marketing should be part of that plan from step one, if possible.
It
So
has to be. It has to be. And for you to get that standing ovation for a book, our viewpoint is it's a three-legged stool. It takes exceptional content. Okay. Content that inspires.
right.
Okay. Second thing it needs is exceptional front and back matter on the book. So we test, by the way, this is something we didn't mention. Besides doing the peer review, we actually take your book cover and put it out to 10,000 people. We'll actually, what we do is we commission a book cover. We'll get 3 or 4 copies. Internally, we'll boil those covers down to 2 that we think are the best. And then we actually put it out to a focus group and of 10,000 people looking for about 900 responses. And which one do you like best? Again, trying to hedge our bets on how well this will be received.
Right.
Then making sure you have great endorsements, all the things that go to the front and back matter of the book. And then the third leg of that stool is having really effective marketing. Because if you may have the greatest content and a beautiful cover, but if nobody buys it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And the same thing with, I hear this a lot. Well, how many are you going to print? It doesn't really matter how many you print. What matters is how many you sell.
Right.
Okay. And in this world, we hear all the time, well, what about, Michelle Obama sold 5 million copies. Well, if you have a platform like Michelle Obama, then, hey, great. You'll probably sell lots of copies too, but that's,
nobody does.
Yeah. Well, you got to be the first lady to start with.
That was the largest ever. It was really unbelievable.
Right.
So,
so, I mean, most of us have to do the hard work. And I like to tell authors, look, if you self-publish, here's the bad news. You're in the book business now and you have to market it. If you traditionally publish, here's the bad news. You're in the book business now and you have to market it. And that's the difference with what we do is we have a really strong marketing program for our authors.
Right.
That really impacts.
Yeah, it's a lot out there, and the traditional publishing, they do expect a lot of followers in that. Now, you mentioned that a lot of your authors are nonfiction who are public speakers and they have a following. So that's definitely well worth mentioning, because it's you got to have that first step. And but this is great.
Well, yeah, but the content's more important. So I agree with you, but most of our folks, when they come aboard, see, in the speaking world, they might be really great at speaking, but they're really lousy at building a business around it. And so it doesn't surprise me that they have less than 1,000 followers. Okay. Doesn't surprise me, because they're so busy doing the one-man shop speaking thing that they're not busy building the rest of their business.
Right.
Okay. So all we're doing is focusing this great content and distributing it in such a way that it builds followers for those folks. So it is a bit of a misnomer that you have to have a following. At least with us, you have to have a following, because we're going to build your following. We're going to do that over 4 years. Okay. So that matters a lot. And those followers are yours, not ours. They're yours. So they're on your Twitter account, on your Facebook and Instagram account. They're on your account, not our account. So that is, and they're the right kind of folks, your perfect customer. And those things really matter. If you are already a Seth Godin of the world, kind of, that already has, lots of followers and that kind of thing, then typically those folks have already done all their own self-publishing and developed their own publishing business, because they figured out the same thing I figured out back in 2013.
It's fantastic, and I know that you've had much success, so we do appreciate you sharing your insight. And I know that you have this available to other people. If you would like to find out more, they can come to Leadership Books, correct? You want to tell us where we can reach out and find more about you?
Yeah, go to leadershipbooks.store. You can go right to the contact page. There is a webcast that we offer that we suggest that you participate in, but you can fill out the contact page. We have an acquisitions editor. She'll reach out to you and begin the conversation of what this all takes to get involved. Even if you're published with another publishing house, we have a way to help you.
Nice, because you don't want to be locked in. You need to really see, and as you said, the publishing world is changing, so you really need to hedge your bets. I had a conversation yesterday with another man, Dan Blank, who was does marketing, and he said, you know, it's always important to own your platform. It's always, you need to own that. And when that comes down to it, it's like you said, if the person walks in your door, make sure you know their name and their phone number or their email or whatever it is, because once they're gone, they're gone. And in today's world, that's half a second. You know, your
Right.
attention span is gone for good. So you need to be able to jump back into their email and jump back in when they're crawling around the websites and suddenly they have a nice little ad there about you. So it's pretty amazing. But thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I had an author real quick that said to me, how come they buy books from you and not Amazon? And I said, well, they do buy books from Amazon. Some people will leave our site and go buy the book at Amazon. But mostly it's because we put you in front of them over and over and over again. And that's what matters, is that the content keeps coming up and you become famous or infamous, you know, in front of your perfect customer. And that's what matters the most.
Right. And that is a marketing trick that not very many writers know. So it's well worth always reaching out to the experts. You know, I again and again, I tell people, do not go to a one-stop shop. Make sure you get as many experts on board as you can, get a nice team surrounding you so that you can decide what's right for you and really learn the process, because hopefully you're going to have another book and another book. And this is,
Right.
you know, a 4-year plan. Well, in year 2, 3, you're doing the follow-up and it keeps going on and on. So that's fantastic. Again, check out Leadership Books. Mike, I appreciate you coming here today and I appreciate all the information you've given us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Joellen. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.